Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are joining us from in the world today. A very warm welcome to the Forum for the Future of Agriculture's month of March, and indeed to our 2021 annual conference. My name is Mark Titterington, and together with Stephen Sacker, a permanent fixture on these occasions, we will be guiding you through an exciting program of keynote interventions, dynamic panel discussions, and inspirational talks. If you've had the opportunity to look at the agenda, you will also see that we have created dedicated time for you to visit our exhibition space on the virtual platform, where you will have the opportunity to hear from our partners and supporters in terms of their ideas and insights on how we make the food and agriculture system more resilient and sustainable. And of course, this being the forum, there's the opportunity to network with each other in our dedicated lounges. Opportunity to make new connections, renew old acquaintances, and make new friends as we collectively discuss how to renew and strengthen the global food and agriculture system. Well, of course, normally we would be all together in Brussels in person. Sadly, of course, this year we are unable to do so, but we hope that your virtual experience is as rewarding and enriching as normal. Well, let's get into the main substance of today's program, and I can think of no better place to start and set direction for the discussions and deliberations that will follow than with our first speaker. He, of course, needs no introduction, little or no introduction. He is a former European Commissioner for the Environment and Research, a co-chair of the United Nations International Resources Panel, and chairman of the RISE Foundation. But today, most importantly, it's in his capacity as chairman for the Forum for the Future of Agriculture that it is my great pleasure to welcome and introduce to you and give the floor to Janusz Potočnik.
Thank you, Mark. Hi, Stephen, dear friends. Good day to everybody, and welcome to the FFA annual conference. Unfortunately, we cannot meet in person in the square in Brussels, but we are doing our best to compensate that with quality substance and organization. The theme of this year is, as you know, food system renewal. It is a well-chosen theme for a much-needed renewal. We have an amazing lineup of speakers from governments, business, science, and civil society from all around the world, packed together in one day, which is supposed to be a climax of series of events held almost for the whole March. Across 4 main sessions, we will discuss the leadership in the food system, climate resilience, how to produce healthy food for all at scale, lessons from the pandemic, and look to the future of the UN Food System Summit. But let me try to set the stage with some points important for today's debate. It is probably only right to start with some lessons we could identify from the corona pandemic. The first is linked to the vulnerability of the food system to shocks. This is not to say that COVID was not serious, but that the shock of a few months of border closures and travel restrictions were enough to put our food system at serious risk. I believe good action has been taken, at least in Europe, to avoid repeating what happened in spring last year. The second, strongly related to this, is the critical importance of strong international cooperation backed up by the best possible scientific advice. When faced by a genuine emergency, those who listened to the medical community have mainly mastered the crisis better. Of course, there are always different imperatives at play, but following the right advice is critical. After a difficult start where we saw European Union member states fracture and look after their own interest, we have seen the collective action is preferable. As the European Union now slowly and hopefully begins to climb out of the crisis, solidarity with the rest of the world, both material and financial, should be considered as our duty. None of us are safe and healthy until all of us are safe and healthy. The best way to overcome our extreme vulnerability is through global cooperation, supported by the latest scientific advice. I cannot think of a more important lesson for our food system, where we unfortunately often seem committed to doing the reverse. This leads me to the importance of the European Green Deal. It was released before the COVID crisis, but it is now as relevant as before, if not more so. Green Deal should not be just seen as a communication adopted in December 2019, but as a set of documents and measures that outline a new vision for Europe. It is a bold vision, a novelty in European policy space, setting a new direction important not only for us, but for the entire global community. The vision is clear and the targets are ambitious. The real challenges remain linked to uncertainty of the implementation. Will we sufficiently address those drivers and pressures leading to challenges we have to solve? Do we offer enough systemic perspective to guide decision-making? And how do we address the extra risks associated with the COVID recovery needs? First, it is critical to address the importance of human activity and behavior, and the drivers and pressures they create. One cannot discuss that without taking into account the essential role of natural resource management. The way we treat natural resources to a large extent determines economic results, as well as environmental and health impacts. Natural resources are the bridge between economy and competitiveness on one hand, and climate change, biodiversity loss, pollution, and health implications on the other. The Club of Rome is very insightful when they argue that we have moved from an empty world dominated by nature to the full world dominated by humans. In the empty world, labor and infrastructure were the limiting factors of human well-being. In the full world, the limiting factors of human well-being are the natural resources and environmental sinks. To put it even clearer, future economic development and well-being depends on understanding and accepting the fact that we have to respect the planetary boundaries and treat natural resources in a responsible way. There is no need to explain how critical this is also in the context of food and land system transition. According to International Resource Panel, if current trends continue, the global material demand would double by 2060. In no way we can decarbonize all the production without massive trade-offs. Therefore, the only realistic chance for reaching our 2030 and 2050 climate targets is to deploy all measures possible to address this likely potential increase. This means that while we strive to improve our well-being, we have to reduce the need for additional virgin natural resources as much as we can. We must decouple economic growth from natural resource use and environmental impacts. This leads me to my second point related to minimizing the risks associated with implementing the Green Deal. How could we reduce these impacts from a systemic perspective? The most effective way is to start at the end, where production system meets societal needs. Let me take an easy, understandable example, our cars. How many of them are actually needed and used, and could we redesign these systems in a more efficient way? Investing in the electrification of vehicles is important, but investing in an electric shared mobility, including infrastructure, would be even more effective, leading to more emissions reductions, material savings, as well as fairer access and well-being. This would also free up space for nature and potentially, if needed, provide even additional space for food provision. Of course, also the production of the system's elements, vehicles, must become cleaner, using renewable energy and alternative materials. But once we have designed the systems better to service societal needs at minimal resource input, there is much less production to be cleaned up. If we apply this to our use of biomass, we can create healthy meals with more plant-based proteins, minimize food waste, pesticides and fertilizers need and use, enable nutrient cycling, design agricultural practices in regenerative ways, and I could continue. Interestingly, current climate policies mostly start from the other end of the picture. They first ask how to clean up energy production and how to use cleaner energy in production, but they do not question whether that production is useful and needed in the first place. More and more, they do indeed start looking also at energy efficiency, but they barely look at how whole systems such as mobility or land and food system could be more resource efficient as a whole, avoiding energy-intensive use and production in the first place. There is a double benefit to such circular measures, and these are rarely talked about, not even inside, let's call it, the circular community. What I mean is the inherent synergy between systemic dematerialization measures and operational energy use, a double win for climate and a double chance for humanity to win the climate change battle and improve well-being. There are many reasons why this is the case, but one big reason is the pervasive notion that growth in well-being is connected to the growth in production and consumption measured by GDP. The idea of creating an economy that serves people with a function but produces less in quantity is still taboo in many boardrooms as well as at ministries, cabinets, and DGs. When we talk about innovation in different communities, we still focus on technological innovation in production, rather than innovation through, for example, new business models designed through the lenses of sustainable food and land system. What would this mean in terms of policy tools? It would probably mean three main things: making integrated well-being the objective across all policies, measuring sustainability with a life cycle perspective, and looking at innovation in categories of economic ecosystems that provide societal functions rather than in categories of production sectors. The Green Deal, it's a good start, and Farm to Fork strategy, it's a good contribution, but we are not there yet. And finally, about the last critical point connected to the success of the Green Deal implementation, about the relation among the vision set in Green Deal and the recovery needs. Policymakers across the European Union are rebuilding economies shattered by the COVID-19. As they decide on post-COVID priorities, they must focus on building an economy that reduces economic dependence on natural resources, increases resilience, and delivers better and fairer services to society, and minimizes adverse impacts on citizens through planetary instability or pollution. In short, leaders should see the European Green Deal and ensuring post-COVID recovery as two sides of the same coin. It is a unique opportunity, as almost double EU budget will be available in the next years. Opportunity not only for efficient recovery, but also for Green Deal-related transition. Missing it would be close to impossible to repair. Dear friends, to conclude, main problem policymakers face is how to provide the level of the step change needed while not dramatically shaking some of the fundamentals of our economic structure. Unfortunately, this will be difficult, if not impossible. Incremental changes will definitely not be enough. I'm convinced that supply cleaning approach and only technological innovation will not solve our major problem. Consumerism, based on quantity-driven production and consumption, characteristic in particular for the developed part of the world, resulting in a massive overuse of natural resources, causing climate change, biodiversity loss, and pollution health implications. We should start from improving our well-being and meeting human needs rather than from overuse and underutilization of natural resources, chasing higher production growth rates, and the logic of putting more products on the markets, regardless the price we are collectively paying. And I'm not talking here about degrowth, rather of the need to set ourselves a different compass to measure our well-being development. We live in market economies where signals to market players are essential for our behavior. We should stop giving producers the signals that destroying natural capital is free of charge. And we should stop confusing the consumers by asking them to behave responsibly, but charging them more if they do so, also when healthy and environmentally friendly food is in question. We have prepared for you an impressive number of even more impressive speakers, which will, I'm sure, address all these and many more important points. By joining, you have already confirmed your readiness to be an active partner in the food system renewal. I wish you all an enjoyable event.
Yanis, thank you very much indeed for that impressive overview of the key elements as you see them in terms of the renewal of the food and agriculture system, particularly in terms of its leadership. I think that will stimulate the discussions that we have coming up during the course of today. I wonder, though, if I might just ask you a couple of follow-up questions based on what you've said. We talked last week in the Policy Week seminars, particularly around the Farm to Fork strategy, and you expressed a confidence, Yanis, that there was an increasing awareness amongst all stakeholders in the value chain, including consumers, of their responsibilities for taking action in renewing the food and agriculture system, and you thought they were ready to act. When you look back on those Policy Week discussions, also the Solutions Week at the beginning of the month, what are the key actions and solutions that really stick in your mind from what you've heard? And then when you think of what's to come today, what are you looking for from our contributors and our keynote speakers that will reinforce your confidence that we really can take the action that's necessary?
Thank you, Mark. First of all, we have organized this year's FFA exactly with the idea to be as concrete as possible. Solutions Week and Policy Week, I think, were a great idea, an excellent approach, and we should certainly see if something like that could be repeated also in the future. I have myself participated in some events in both weeks. They were focusing on soil management and also attention to the forests. I think both areas are something on which we should focus in the future. And I think also the concept of regenerative agriculture is quite important. For example, why? Because on one hand, European Commission is itself establishing in the 8th Environmental Action Programme regenerative economy as one of the key goals. And I think that keeping consistency among documents would be important. And second, it is this concept which many business players see as the way ahead. And it would be good if it's integrated in these efforts. So many good ideas shared during the March events. We still have to digest them, and we have to see how to best use them. But what I'm expecting from the conference, which we will hear today, I'm expecting in the first place that we will address some of those questions which I have mentioned, the system change approach, connecting land and food systems, then addressing the drivers and pressures, importance of putting natural resource management in the center of our debates, and of course also to hear the readiness to address the market signals which are currently setting producers and consumers in the wrong direction. Finally, I would also like to hear readiness to change governance and better connect those responsible for the problems with those responsible for environmental health, to jointly design, cooperate without hidden interests on the targets, solutions, funding, and so on. In short, on holistic pathways which we need to deliver our 2030 and 2050 targets.
Yanis, thank you very much indeed for that. And something else that you said that always resonates with me, you're always very keen that we focus on the opportunity that is in front of us and not just the challenge. And I know that's something that other speakers during the course of today will pick up on. Of course, we'll be hearing from you a little bit later on today in the annual conference. But for now, Yanis Potočnik, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Well, over the weekend, we also received a letter of support for the work of the Forum for the Future of Agriculture from the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres. The letter was sent to Yanis in his capacity as chairman of the Forum for the Future of Agriculture. And Yanis has asked me to read that out to you now at the beginning of today's conference. And it is my honor and pleasure to do so. This is what the UN Secretary General had to say. Ladies and gentlemen, it is a pleasure to greet this important forum on the future of agriculture. Food systems are crucial for eliminating hunger, promoting economic growth, and protecting the planet. Despite remarkable progress across the decades, food systems are still falling short in putting meals on all tables and in delivering on their potential to generate gains across the Sustainable Development Goals. The urgency is clear. Food systems continue to generate more than 1/3 of all greenhouse gas emissions in the midst of a climate emergency. The sector also employs more than 1 billion people. We must transform our food systems, but we cannot leave anybody behind. The Food Systems Summit that I will convene in September will be a key moment and opportunity. I'm encouraged by the many hundreds of solutions that have already been proposed by diverse sets of stakeholders and institutions as inputs to this process. Our challenge is to work more closely and effectively together to bring these ideas to life. The European Union's Green Deal and its Farm to Fork strategy are important parts of the picture. Together we can and must renew the world's food systems. Well, that letter is already in your e-briefcase in the icon tray at the bottom of the virtual platform for which you are following today's conference, and I encourage you to take the opportunity to review its contents at your convenience. Well, I think that's got us underway. It's certainly as much as you need from me. So I shall, at this point, hand over to Stephen to take us through the session. Stephen.